Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and I'd like to recognize also the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection with this land. I'm Laurie Sigurdson, the Alberta NDP Critic for Seniors Issues, Continuing Care and Home Care, and I'm joined here today by our Deputy Leader, Christina Gray. By now, all Albertans know about the story of Mr. Blair Caniff, who was taken from the Royal Alex Hospital to a travel lodge in Leduc. There he was given a room that wasn't equipped for his wheelchair and fed fast food. And he is not alone. We have seen reports of other patients receiving medical treatment in other motel rooms. This is an unacceptable situation for anyone, and one that requires this government to be accountable for implementing what's being called Motel Medicine. Instead, Albertans have been subjected to the most ridiculous and embarrassing spectacle of a health minister refusing to take responsibility for the complete failures resulting in the Motel Medicine crisis. The minister repeatedly insisted that Blair Caniff chose the provider and where he was taken. We know this is a lie. The minister insisted that the proper procedure was followed. She's also insisted no one has any idea how he was discharged to the agency that placed him in the hotel. These are the unacceptable answers Albertans get after a week. When asked if anyone is checking to see if the places patients are being discharged to are acceptable, she didn't know. When asked who made the list of agencies that included this particular social service provider, she didn't know. When asked who sets the standards when it comes to discharge, she didn't know. And when asked 4 times to take responsibility and apologize for the treatment that Mr. Caniff received, all she could say was she felt sorry if he felt that the service he was going to get was misrepresented to him. This is unacceptable, and things must change. I'd now like to turn things over to Christina.
Thank you very much, Laurie. So it's incredibly clear that questions still remain about Motel Medicine, what happened in this situation, and how the UCP can continue to refer to this as the proper procedures, and I quote, having been followed. Albertans need to be assured that this practice of motel medicine will never be inflicted on them or their families, and that's why we've written to the Health Quality Council of Alberta for an investigation. And today, we are calling on the government to end motel medicine once and for all. And they can do this with the stroke of a pen. It does not require legislation. We don't need to go back into the building. They could assure every Alberta patient being discharged from hospital that they will not be sent to a motel. Now, let's not forget that this is Danielle Smith's preferred policy. She's the one who advocated for motel medicine during her leadership campaign, and her health minister has now merely implemented it. So today, the Premier and the Minister must do the right thing. They must end motel medicine once and for all. And when they do, Albertans will breathe a sigh of relief. Now, before I take questions, I do want to address comments made by Danielle Smith earlier today. She has just revealed that after a week, we finally know 39 people may be in the same boat as Mr. Caniff. This is ridiculous, and it shows how incompetent this government is. We have asked all week, every day in question period in the legislature, how many people have been affected. Neither the ministers nor the Premier would give any answers. And now we know that the number is 39 when dealing with this one provider. But how many other providers are there? How many other people are receiving motel medicine in this province? The government has not ensured safe, accessible accommodations for Albertans who have been discharged from the hospital. This is why motel medicine needs to stop. And my colleague, Laurie Sigurdson, and I would be very happy to take any questions you may have on this situation.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9 to get into the question queue. We'll start with questions in the room.
Thank you. It's Jeremy Thompson, CTV Edmonton here. I guess wondering sort of whether you can make this sort of the distinction that the government is making here between, housing providers and like healthcare service providers. I was speaking with the Contentment Social Services, the housing director there, and she was saying, they're not providing, they're not supposed to provide, they're not offering the sort of the high level, high needs type of care that many of these clients who live in the housing that they provide do require. And so I guess is that an important distinction for you in this situation?
So I think what Albertans are concerned about and what I am concerned about is we have Mr. Caniff and others who started with an admission into hospital and ended up in a motel that was inadequate, couldn't provide adequate nutrition, wasn't even accessible for someone in a wheelchair. And that is the AHS system that has left somebody inside that motel. That practice must stop. Motel medicine must stop. We understand from media that other residents in the Travelodge in Leduc and in these motels are receiving medical care. From the beginning, Minister LaGrange and Minister Nixon have each pointed to the other as to who is responsible. The UCP government and Danielle Smith, in their entirety, are responsible for this. They can end the practice of motel medicine. That is what they need to do. The finger pointing is not going to help Albertans. It's not going to help those who are currently in motels. It's not going to help us find out how many more there are. So some of these distinctions and he said, she said, it's not helpful. It's not what Albertans are looking for. We need to end the practice. I'll just allow my colleague to say a few words if she'd like to add anything.
Well, I certainly agree with what Christina said. The only thing I would add is that, the Minister of Health said repeatedly proper procedures were followed. And, we knew about this issue over the weekend. We talked about it in the legislature every day, trying to get answers, trying to get support for Mr. Caniff. And it was only yesterday that the UCP did anything about this situation. So they let him languish in that hotel, and others too that we don't know all their stories of. So it seems like they have dragged their feet on it, and at first denied that it's their responsibility, and then, only yesterday did anything.
And so I guess, again, speaking with the housing provider, they seem to have been, trying their best, I suppose, as they're dealing with a previous apartment building that had pest problems. They have these clients, they need them to be in some sort of housing, so they thought perhaps purchasing the Travelodge, which fell through, could be a solution. Now they're in this other hotel in Leduc, and it seems to me that it is a housing supply problem, or quality housing supply problem that they're dealing with anyway, and they think that these motels or hotel rooms are their best option for finding private rooms for these people, given the lack of other sort of affordable housing options kind of thing. So I guess, do you have a proposed solution to just the housing side of this issue?
Well, first of all, I just want to say who's responsible for this situation is the Minister of Health, right? These agencies need to be properly vetted and accredited. And as we've said, Premier Smith said during the campaign that, maybe it's a good place to put long-term care patients in motels. So it's something that the government is doing themselves. They're creating this. Mr. Caniff had a stroke. He was in a wheelchair. He was put in a non-accessible suite that created great difficulty for him. The Minister of Health is responsible for this. Yes, we have a housing issue in our province, and again, it is because there's not enough investment in housing. And of course, this service provider shouldn't be having to figure it out all on their own. They need to be working with the Ministry of Health. If they're a provider for the Ministry of Health, then they should be trying to figure out how to serve people. And the accountability rests completely with the minister.
Okay, we'll just do one more quick pass for questions. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. One more question in the room? Sure.
I'll go again here. So it just, again, you listened to this morning's press conference. It sounds like with the Premier, she mentioned that government or ministry staff have been on site at this particular hotel in Leduc trying to make sure that this group of 40 folks, or 39, whatever the number is, don't just sort of wind up without housing and in shelter kind of thing. She says the housing group had like a $25,000 hotel bill that the government has now paid, and they're going to be working, to prevent those folks from losing their housing. I just wonder what you make of all that and the government's now moves to address the current situation.
Well, I just want to say, I mean, the current government created this situation by not vetting the housing provider and making sure people were put in appropriate housing, not understanding the situation. Minister LaGrange said repeatedly that the individual, in this case, Mr. Caniff, had chosen to go to a motel. He didn't even know he was going to a motel. So there was very little transparency. Where's the rigor in the assessment of these facilities? So, okay, yesterday, the government did move in to address some of these issues, which is good. They're responsible. They need to end motel medicine. But how come it took them so long? It was only when it was after several days that we had been asking about this, trying to get the proper care for Mr. Caniff. Again, I'll just say it certainly responsibility for this whole terrible situation lands at the feet of the UCP government.
Okay, thank you very much. That ends our press conference for today.